My name is Gerald Donovan. I'm the retired postmaster of Benton Harbor.
Very nice. So, what do you think of when you hear the word masculinity?
Well, I think of a man that doesn't look like a girl.
That works. So, throughout your life, do you feel like masculinity was ever something that you had to make an effort to perform, or do you think it was just came naturally?
Well, it came naturally for me, but also I was very cognizant of the fact that I didn't want somebody to look at me twice to see if I was a girl or a boy.
Yeah.
So I didn't grow my hair real long or that sort of thing. But that's what most guys did. It wasn't something we talked about.
Yeah.
But I've noticed my recollection, and it's been a long time ago, guys didn't wear jewelry. They didn't wear necklaces or earrings, and they do it now. And it's just not manly. When I look at it, I say, wow, that's pretty earrings.
Yeah.
Maybe your wife would enjoy them. But, you know, a lot of those guys are my age. They're bald and they got ponytails and they're wearing those earrings. And I'm saying, oh, God.
Yeah.
But that's just me. I don't care. Hey, if they're happy, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Doesn't bother me a bit.
So, you were in the military for some time.
Yes.
Do you think that your experiences in the military had impacted how you felt about masculinity at all?
No.
No?
It's not like you had a choice. You had to get a haircut every week. Were given a uniform to wear. And rules about wearing that uniform. You couldn't have your hands in your pocket. You couldn't put something in your pack of cigarettes or a ballpoint pen in your shirt pocket, your pants pockets. You couldn't put your hands in your pockets. Very rigid. My thinking today is, with all of this push for women to be actually in combat zones, I don't know how that would work.
Do you think that's because, like, masculine traits were required almost?
No, I don't think that's it at all. I'm thinking, you know, and I could name other examples. I could name fire departments. There was push that you needed more lady firefighters, and you needed more lady cops. And they had to actually dumb down the physical requirements. For example, in the post office, when I started in 1963 working on the dock, you had to pick up a 80-pound bag, big mail bag, put it up on your shoulder, walk 20 feet, and put it on a nutting truck. And the women were starting to be more and more prevalent, and they couldn't do that, so they just no longer made that a requirement, because you can't have separate requirements for men and for women.
Right.
You know, a lot of jobs in a post office, one man would be dumping sacks and sorting mail, while the lady couldn't pick up the sack and dump it, so now you got two people on it.
Right.
And you got the men saying, well, if you got two women on it, we want two men on it. And firefighters, I used to eat lunch when I was a mailman. There was a fire station on Nichols Road, and there was 4 or 5 of us would stop and eat in the gas station. We'd actually eat on the back bumper of the fire truck. Bring up some folding chairs, and when that siren went off, you better grab your dinner bucket, because
It was gonna be gone.
that fire truck was on its way, and it did happen. But we got pretty friendly with the fire chief. Just a great guy, Jack Gould. He's gone now, but he was it's a volunteer fire department, but he was a full-time chief, and he had a family, and they had living quarters right there at the fire station. And there was a fire close by, so Jack was the first guy, and the guy who lived across the street was the second guy. They jumped in the truck, and it wasn't far away, and they were the first ones there, and Jack put a ladder up and told the guy, you go up first with an axe, and I'm following you, dragging the hose, the water hose. And the guy got about halfway up and froze. And so Jack had to literally put him on his shoulder and push him up the ladder and push him through the window. And he had a stern talk with him afterwards, and he says, "You're done.
Yeah.
That could get somebody killed." And I've often thought about that. You've got lady firefighters, and the average lady just is not physically as strong as the average man. And there's compromises, and I think that's an issue in the military.
Yeah.
Would you want your daughter in a combat zone?
Right.
I wouldn't. And I don't think that's being anti-female. I think it's just common sense. There's certain things that guys my age don't want their wives doing, or their daughters, or their grandchildren. I think that line is becoming blurred, and I'm not in favor of it. But it doesn't impact me personally, so I don't lose any sleep over it.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that was my granddaughter climbing up that ladder with an axe and had to go through a window where there was a fire, I wouldn't be happy.
Yeah.
That's me.
So this kind of actually goes into what you were just saying, but what differences do you see between how masculinity is perceived and portrayed today versus when you were younger? So that can be based on appearances or anything like that.
Well, I think the line is blurred to the point where most younger men don't even give it a thought. They wear long flowing hair and ponytails like girls used to wear, and they wear earrings, and the athletes do it, everybody's doing it, and I think it's only the old guys like me that look twice and say, what the heck's going on with that?
Yeah.
And girls, you look at girls, I don't know how many times I've said to my wife, is that a girl or is that a guy? Short hair, and the lines are blurred.
Yeah.
And that's reflected in our society too.
Do you think that a lot of masculinity is based on how you portray yourself and your own appearance, like physically?
Oh, I don't know. With some guys, sure. You see guys with a flat top haircut, and their dad had a flat top, and that's just what men did, and they carry it into the next generation. But that same guy might have a flat top and a ponytail. I just chuckle. I say, hey, if he's happy, I'm happy. It doesn't make any impact on my life. It has nothing to do. I have friends that I worked with, and we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
It's just people are what they are.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, really. If they're happy, I'm happy.
Yeah, that's a good answer. So if you had to come up with a personal definition for masculinity based on your own lived experiences and perception, what would it be?
I just prefer to have a guy look like a guy. And you don't have to wonder when he walks away, is that a girl with a ponytail? But, what difference does it make? It's nobody I know anyway.
Yeah.
If they're happy, I'm happy.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all the questions I have. Thank you for doing this.
Well, you're welcome.
I appreciate it.
Is the check going to be in the mail?
Of course.
Yes.
So when speaking to people of other generations, especially people who are much farther apart from your generation, it offers a lot of perspective on the way that they were influenced and are to this day influenced by the terms and conditions of society as it was when they were younger. We can see this a lot with this specific interview in how it really does tie super strongly to hegemonic masculinity standards. And I think that we have seen, and we will see in future interviews with younger people, hegemonic masculinity is something that presents itself differently in present day than it did back then in like the 1960s and 70s. I think that the emphasis placed on appearance and the physical manifestation of masculinity is something that ties to hegemonic masculinity very strongly. For instance, when asked definitions of masculinity, it was a lot. It was a lot rooted in appearance. For instance, the mention of jewelry, hair length, clothing, and the visual ability to perceive one's gender is something rooted in hegemonic masculinity that we are turning away from present day. I think it's fair to say. Another thing unique to this interview and unique to older generations specifically is the emphasis on, or the equation of, masculinity and manliness and physical ability. For instance, the mentioning of women in the army and women in more physically demanding jobs is an opinion that does relate masculinity to a man's natural physical strength and ability to perform differently than women. This is not an uncommon stance of people of older generations, because these are the people that were around for the draft. They were in the army, they were in more physically demanding jobs, and they were there before there were women popular in the fields. So it's not an uncommon stance, but it is one that we are moving away from and gaining more inclusivity towards now. Another thing that was brought up in this interview a couple times, and I think expresses the change that we're seeing, is the phrase, "those lines are becoming blurred." Gender is something that is quite intrinsically tied to masculinity in a lot of ways, because these older definitions align with hegemonic masculinity in that they equate masculinity to manhood, as opposed to masculinity being a way of appearing, a way of seeming, a way of presenting. So when, in terms of masculinity, lines are becoming blurred, it kind of equates to the movement apart from hegemonic masculinity, because the lines are becoming blurred because women and gender nonconforming peoples are expressing masculinity in ways that older generations are unfamiliar with, and we in present day we're just coming into terms with. Another interesting note from the interview that definitely has a lot to say about the way that we interpret masculinity now is the quote that men now don't even give it a thought when it comes to the presentation of masculinity. The fact that it is a perception now of men today by men of older generations that men now don't give a thought to presenting masculinity is a definite testament to the fact that hegemonic masculinity is being brought to the wayside, because hegemonic masculinity demands the conformity to societal masculine standards that we don't really have anymore, and we definitely once did. I do think that it is of importance, and possibly of the most importance, that a sentiment consistently reiterated throughout the interview was, "I don't really care. If they're happy, I'm happy." Because so often we can connote older generations to older mindsets and mindsets of exclusion. So it was really refreshing to hear and encouraging to hear the phrase, "if they're happy, I'm happy," so often when we were talking about things that are controversial and that are unfamiliar for a lot of older people who aren't exposed to the same realms of society. They don't get the same introduction to new societal ways. So I think it was just a reminder that we all have the ability to accept each other as people and lead with love, regardless of generational differences.